I do a bad job, then Dr. Worthington will make it better. So right now, I'm Mr. Harp. I teach 8th grade U.S. history at Longfellow Middle School in Norman. So right now, just kind of whisper to your neighbor and kind of see, what is a maroon? So go ahead and start talking to your neighbor. Okay. All right. So who wants to raise their hand and give a guess of what is a maroon?
They're Jamaican slaves who had a revolt and
Okay, close.
yeah, just a little bit.
Someone else. Okay. So she was close. So a maroon is basically, you're right, and we're going to focus on Jamaica, but it's really anyone that is a runaway slave, or it could be a native. So technically, Native Americans in America could be considered a maroon. So whenever Europeans came, and whenever they settled off different areas, they can be called a maroon as well. So basically, it's a runaway slave or natives who managed to make a community of their own, isolated from any harm from slave owners or enemies, okay? So for this lesson, for this short lesson, we're going to focus on the Jamaican maroons. And we're actually going to listen to a poem by a Jamaican-born person that now is British, okay? But I'm going to kind of give you a little bit of a basic idea of what a maroon is. So, different, like I said, maroons were not just in Jamaica or in the Caribbean. It's kind of basically anywhere where there was European contact, okay? So, obviously, whenever the Europeans came over, who was the very first country in Europe that came to the Americas? Raise your hand. No one? Is this a shy bunch? Someone raise their hand. Spain, okay. So basically, the Spanish would be the first ones that come over. So whenever they come to the Caribbean, I hear a lot of talking. Sorry. So basically, wherever the European colonization comes, that's where maroons, that's how these people are going to be, okay? So, like I said, we're going to focus on Jamaica. So, the Spanish settled in Jamaica in 1509, and the British took over in 1655, which allowed for many slaves to escape and for the two major maroon societies on opposite ends of the island. So here's a map of Jamaica. It's kind of fuzzy, sorry. But basically, these people that created these societies still exist today. Obviously, it's going to be kind of more of a dwindled down family tree. But basically, there's a western side and an eastern side, okay? And just like to kind of for you to be better aware, so obviously in America, there was Native American tribes in America. So wherever, whenever the British came over to America, whenever they pushed these Native American tribes to the west, these Indian tribes were basically fleeing away so that way they could keep their customs and traditions alive. So, I printed out a thing for our poem. Actually, let's listen to it first. So this poem, like I said, he is Jamaican, but now lives in Britain. And basically in this poem, he talks about how whenever Europeans come to a new area, what do they usually do? They bring their ideas, their history, so then their customs and their traditions are kind of pushed away and forgotten. So he talks about this in the poem. So he kind of has a Jamaican accent, so it's kind of funny and hard to follow along. I did not print off the words of the poem, but you can follow along on the screen. And then whenever we watch it once, I have kind of like a definition chart of different ideas and events that he talks about. That way you'll kind of better understand it the next time we watch it, okay? So let's watch it once. Let's see if this will work. while he's doing that, I'm going to go ahead and pass out this definition chart. You're going to have to share with the neighbors. I only have 30. Yeah, you go ahead.
Them tell me what them want to tell me. Bandage up me eye with me own history, blind me to me own identity. Them tell me about 1066 and all that. Them tell me about Dick Whittington and eat cat, but Toussaint Louv, what you know, them never tell me about that. Toussaint, a slave with vision, lick back, Napoleon, battalion, and first black republic born. Toussaint, the thorn to the French. Toussaint, the beacon of the Haitian Revolution. Them tell me about the man who discovered the balloon and the cow jump over the moon. Them tell me about the dish, run away with the spoon, but them never tell me about Nanny the maroon. Nanny, seafar, woman of mountain, dream, fire woman, struggle, hopeful, stream to freedom, river. Them tell me about Lord Nelson and Waterloo, but them never tell me about Shaka the Great Zulu. Them tell me about Columbus and 1492, but what happened to the Carib and the Arawak too? Them tell me about Florence Nightingale and she lamp, and how Robin Hood used to camp. Them tell me old King Cole was a merry old soul, but them never tell me about Mary Seacole. From Jamaica, she traveled far to the Crimean War. She volunteered to go even when the British said no. She braved the Russian snow, a healing star among the wounded, a yellow sunrise among the dying. Them tell me what them want to tell me, but now I checking out me history. I carving out my identity.
Okay. So like I said, it was kind of funny, wasn't it? So, now since we know a little bit more of what a maroon is, I know this poem doesn't really necessarily just talk about maroons, but someone raised their hand again, so what is a maroon? It's a runaway, so they're running away from the Europeans. They're wanting to keep their own traditions alive, right? So, he is talking about all these different ideas on your sheets. I need to pass those. So he's talking about all these different, like famous British people or famous wars that were talked about. So he's talking about, on your first one, so like 1066, it was, guys, so crucial in English history as it marked the takeover of the English society by the French. And it talks about different Haitian leaders. I'm going to go in detail about all of them. But like Nanny Day Maroon is a general term for someone that's in Jamaica. Lord Nelson is a famous English admiral. The Battle of Waterloo, which was a famous battle that they defeated Napoleon. Shaka, who was an influential leader of the Zulu nation. Caribs and Arawaks, those were the Indians in the Caribbean that Columbus first met in the Caribbean. Of course, we all know who Florence Nightingale is, the famous British nurse. Robin Hood, we know who that is. Then Mary C. Cole is who he talked about at the very end. And she's a legendary, like a Jamaican woman who is basically kind of like their version of Florence Nightingale. The Crimean War, we should know what that is. Then Old King Cole, the Cow Jumped Over the Moon. So that's like a famous nursery rhyme. So, knowing kind of the background of what a maroon is, hearing the poem once and kind of seeing how that all kind of connects, then actually, since it's kind of hard to understand what he's saying, breaking down of how all these different things are covering like British history and Jamaican history. Basically, he's talking about, so he's checking out his own history, his own identity, and how in British schools or whatnot, he's being taught kind of like the British superior history, just like maybe in America, we kind of view as America on this pedestal and how American history is more important than maybe like the Native American history or whatever. So he's talking about all these different important Jamaican figures and their history is kind of forgotten by the British history. Okay? So since we kind of know a little bit more about what he's talking about in the poem, let's watch it one more time and see if it makes more sense.
Checking out me history. Them tell me what them want to tell me. Bandage up me eye with me own history, blind me to me own identity. Them tell me about 1066 and all that. Them tell me about Dick Whittington and E-Cat, but Toussaint Louis, what you know, them never tell me about that. Toussaint, a slave with vision, lick back, Napoleon, battalion, and first black republic born. Toussaint, the thorn to the French. Toussaint, the beacon of the Haitian Revolution. Them tell me about the man who discovered the balloon and the cow jump over the moon. Them tell me about the dish, run away with the spoon, but them never tell me about Nanny the maroon. Nanny, seafar, woman of mountain, dream, firewoman, struggle, hopeful, stream to freedom, river. Them tell me about Lord Nelson and Waterloo, but them never tell me about Shaka the Great Zulu. Them tell me about Columbus and 1492, but what happened to the Carib and the Arawak too? Them tell me about Florence Nightingale and she lamp, and how Robin Hood used to camp. Them tell me old King Cole was a merry old soul, but them never tell me about Mary C. Cole. From Jamaica, she traveled far to the Crimean War. She volunteered to go even when the British said no. She braved the Russian snow, a healing star among the wounded, a yellow sunrise among the dying. Them tell me what them want for tell me. But now I checking out me history. I carving out my identity.
All right, did that make more sense the second time since we broke it down a little bit? I know it's kind of fast paced, but broke it down a little bit more so it kind of made more sense with the poem. Does that make more sense? Raise your hand if that makes more sense. Okay. All right, that's all I have for you.